The idea behind the British Operation Postmaster was simple: secretly board Italian and German ships and sail them to Lagos without being noticed. However, this was one of the most controversial missions for Britain to lead. In fact, British authorities refused to support the raid. The mission seemed impossible, and failure meant that the rest of Europe might turn against Britain for espionage. This left the mission in the hands of the SOE and the SSRF. In 1941, the British Admiralty received intel about German submarines using a refueling base in the Vichy French rivers of Africa. In response, the Combined Operations Command sent members of the Special Operations Executive, SOE, and the Small Scale Raiding Force, or SSRF, to find and investigate the German submarine bases. So on August 9th, 1941, a team of 5 SSRF members left Poole Harbour in Dorset, England, on a 65-ton Brixham yacht trawler named Maid Honour. They had a 6-week voyage ahead of them. The Maid Honour arrived at Freetown, Sierra Leone on the 21st of September. The SSRF team then met up with a team of SOE soldiers, and the search for German submarine bases began. Unfortunately, they failed to locate any. They didn't find any submarines either. However, the SOE did set up a base of operations so that they could observe Vichy French, Spanish, and Portuguese territories. Over the next few weeks, the SOE agents learned that 3 Axis ships occupied a port in Santa Isabel, Fernando Po, a Spanish island off the West African coast. These 3 ships were the merchant vessel Duchessa d'Aosta, a 7,872-ton Italian cargo liner called Locomba, a large German tugboat, and Burundi, a diesel-powered barge that was also presumed to be a German vessel. Of the 3 boats, it was the Duchessa d'Aosta that posed the greatest threat. Firstly, the radios on board could potentially relay information about Allied naval movements. Secondly, the ship's manifest claimed to only be carrying general supplies, such as wool, tanning materials, and copper ingots. However, the first page of the manifest was missing. This led SOE agents to believe that Duchessa d'Aosta was also carrying arms and ammunition. SOE agent Leonard Guise was tasked to visit the island and keep an eye on the ships while the SOE commanders pushed for permission to seize Locomba and disable the Duchessa d'Aosta. Finally, almost 3 months later, on the 20th of November 1941, the Admiralty granted such permission. The SOE and SSRF planned Operation Postmaster together. The original plan involved 17 locally recruited men, 11 SSRF commandos, and 4 SOE agents. They would transport the raiders to the island on 2 tugboats, and the raiders would work together to grab the Axis vessels while keeping the Axis soldiers distracted. Unfortunately, their plan hit a bump when Sir George Giffard, the British General Officer of West Africa Command, refused to support the operation with the 17 locals. Giffard felt that any which way those planning Operation Postmaster looked at it, the chances of failure seemed to far outweigh those of success. In his own words, the operation should not, I repeat, not take place. As such, the Foreign Office and the British Embassy in Madrid refused to support the operation, and the Admiralty suspended it. A major issue was that the Axis vessels were docked at a Spanish island, and while Spain seemed to side more with the Axis and nearly did join the Axis at one point, Spain maintained their neutrality throughout the war. This meant the operation might be regarded as one of espionage and piracy against the Spanish. But Churchill wanted the mission to go through anyway. In Churchill's Secret Warriors, author Damian Lewis explains, Winston Churchill had been briefed at all stages on the progress of the mission, and frustration was boiling over with the local delays. Eventually, it became evident that the Spanish were strengthening relations with the Axis. SSRF commander Gus March Phillips held a meeting with Giffard and the Admiralty in hopes of reigniting the mission. Eventually, the Foreign Office and Admiralty changed their minds and gave the mission a thumbs up on the 6th of January 1942. They claimed that intervention was inevitable. However, to keep the operation a secret, they would not involve the aforementioned 17 local men. This mission would be conducted by the SOE and SSRF alone. With Operation Postmaster back on the cards, a new plan was struck. SOE agent Richard Lippert found an undercover job as an employee for the shipping company John Holt & Co. While working for the company, Lippert found out that the Duquesa d'Aosta crew loved to party and would regularly attend parties held ashore. And so Lippert made himself known as a party animal to those around him so that he could grow closer to the enemy crew. While Lippert was undercover, the other SOE and SSRF agents made their way to the port on two large tugboats, the Vulcan and the Nuneaton. The governor of Nigeria helped recruit a few members for the tugboats. While they were on their way, the agents naturally practiced for the mission. And they were to use a foldable kayak called Folbot to approach the vessels as quietly as possible, and then they would scale the side of the ship and commandeer it. On the 14th of January, the raiders closed in on Santa Isabel Harbor. The two tugs anchored themselves 180 meters from the shore until 11:30 p.m. The harbor's lights were extinguished at night due to a wartime blackout, and as author Damian Lewis explained, the assault was to go ahead under the cover of a waning moon when the night would be at its darkest. On the Fernando Po shore, Lippert arranged a dinner party for the crew of the Duquesa d'Aosta and Lacomba. It's not clear how many crew members remained on board the ship that night, but at least 12 Italian officers and 2 German officers from Lacomba showed up at Lippert's honey trap. While the Axis were enjoying their feast, the Vulcan made its way into the Santa Isabel Harbor. On the Vulcan were Captain March Phillips and 10 other agents tasked with taking control of the Duquesa d'Aosta. At the same time, 4 other agents from the Nuneaton left the tugboat behind and paddled to the Lacomba and Babundi on Folbots. Although some crew members from the Duquesa d'Aosta noticed the tugboat coming into the harbor, they didn't think much of it. However, a watchman on the Lacomba spotted the SOE agents as they were boarding the barge. He said, "Who goes there? Identify yourselves," while shining a light at Captain Graham Hayes. Although Hayes had a Tommy gun at his side, he understood that opening fire could blow the mission wide open. Instead, Hayes answered the watchman using what little German he knew and managed to convince him he was bringing a letter for the captain of the ship. In response, 2 of Lacomba's crewmen came to help Hayes board the ship. When the men got closer, they didn't recognize Hayes and figured that something unusual was happening. Before the men could react, the SOE agents were aiming .45 caliber machine guns at them. The 2 African crew members jumped overboard without raising any alarms. Over the next few minutes, the SOE agents attached 2 explosive charges to the vessel's anchors. They took control of the ship, detonated the charges, and guided the Lacomba out of the harbor and back to the Nuneaton. The Lacomba was already tied to the Babundi, making it easy to tow the Babundi as well. By the time of the first explosion on the Lacomba, the 11 agents from the Vulcan managed to board the Duquesa d'Aosta. Somehow, the explosion on the Lacomba had not alarmed any of the Duquesa d'Aosta's crew. Captain Jeffrey Appleyard was in charge of attaching the explosive charges to the Duquesa d'Aosta's anchors, while the other 10 agents searched the ships for Axis forces to take prisoner. The second Lacomba explosion was far louder than the first, and the townspeople went to the pier to investigate. For the SOE agents scouring the Italian vessel, this spelled disaster, and time was against them. March Phillips and Appleyard then teamed up to fasten the Vulcan tug to the Italian vessel. With this done, they set off the explosives and tugged the Duquesa d'Aosta out of the harbor. Although multiple townsfolk were now at the pier, none made any attempts to stop the vessel's escape. Other townsfolk had thought the explosions had come from an aerial attack, and several anti-aircraft emplacements opened fire at imaginary targets. The townsfolk were also scared to turn on the lights of the harbor, as this could make the harbor an easily identifiable target to the imaginary aircraft above. With the Duquesa d'Aosta making its way back to the Maid Honor, Operation Postmaster was a success. In less than 30 minutes, the SOE and SSRF managed to steal 3 Axis boats and capture 29 Italians aboard the Italian vessel, and not a single shot was fired at anyone throughout the entire mission. According to author Damian Lewis, it was fast becoming clear that the seemingly impossible had transpired. Operation Postmaster had been successful beyond anyone's wildest imaginings. The raiders had stolen away the 3 target ships, and while fierce gunfire still illuminated the sky above the town, not a shot seemed to have been directed their way. On the 18th of January 1942, the Vulcan released a report claiming that it had captured enemy vessels 370 kilometers offshore in international waters and was en route to Lagos. Agent Lippert, the party animal, didn't leave the island that same night, and Spanish authorities questioned him regarding the incident. He managed to convince them that he wasn't involved in the raid in any way. While the authorities believed him, they wouldn't let him leave the island. But Lippert didn't play by the rules, escaping to British waters on a canoe. Success in Operation Postmaster seemed unlikely, yet against all odds, Churchill's secret warriors managed to get the job done without sustaining a single casualty. This operation proved to British High Command that the SOE was an organisation to be reckoned with. Postmaster is often seen as the SOE's most successful exploit. Colin Gubbins, an SOE agent who took part in Operation Postmaster, scoffed at how long it took for approval to get the mission going. In his words, perhaps next time it won't be necessary for prolonged negotiations before undertaking a 30-minute operation. The Spanish government was furious when they found out about the raid. Foreign Minister Serrano Suñer released a report claiming that the operation was an intolerable attack on Spanish sovereignty. No Spaniard can fail to be roused by this act of piracy committed in defiance of every right, and within water, under our jurisdiction. Do not be surprised if we return the answer which the case demands, that of arms. In the end, this threat didn't amount to much, as the British government had plausible deniability. But do you think Operation Postmaster was worth it, considering it could have provoked a war with the Spanish? Should Churchill have stopped the mission? And lastly, are there any other SOE missions you'd like us to cover? As always guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something new. And if you want to learn something even more about this mission, make sure you check out Damian Lewis's book. It's super interesting and has a lot of minute details that we couldn't fit into this video.